Good morning, dear students. Today we are going to discuss about the different types of sourcing. As you all are aware, sourcing means finding the best supplier at a very cost efficient manner. So sourcing is a very wide term. I hope you know the basic difference between sourcing as well as procurement. So procurement deals only with the procurement of materials from the supplier, only that particular part. But when it comes to the sourcing, it's not only concerned with the collection or the procurement of the materials from the supplier, but rather than creating the agreement, managing of the agreement, managing of the contract, maintaining relationship and the procurement, then winding up of the contract. Each and everything is a part of the concept of sourcing. Sourcing is very wide in nature when compared to the concept of procurement. So sourcing includes creating agreements with the supplier up to the winding up of the contract. So basically, in short, we can summarize sourcing is the procurement of the materials from the suppliers at a very reasonable cost by considering all other factors. And we have different types of sourcing out there, and mainly the main types of sourcings are sole sourcing is there, single sourcing is there, dual sourcing is there, and finally the multiple sourcing. I repeat, sole sourcing, single sourcing, dual sourcing as well as multiple sourcing. So what is the concept of sole sourcing? A sole source purchase means that only one supplier, to the best of the requester's knowledge and belief, based upon thorough research, is capable of delivering the required product or service. And a sole source vendor doesn't give you any options because that vendor is the only vendor that can provide you with the products and goods you need. In other words, that vendor is the sole source of the product you need. So you have to make a deal with that vendor even if it costs more than you want to pay. So as per our basic understanding in a procurement process or in a sourcing process, so we have two parties are there, right? So one is buyer and other one is the supplier. So the buyer is intended to purchase something or some materials or raw materials or components or whatever the things from the supplier. So under sole sourcing, only one supplier is there in the market who is capable of supplying that particular input to the buyer. So before purchasing or before confirming an order with any of the suppliers, the buying organizations will go for a thorough research regarding how many suppliers are available in the market, regarding the cost, regarding the history of the organization, all those things, right? But what will happen if you don't have any choice? So under sole sourcing, there is no choice for the suppliers. That means only one supplier is out there. There is some sort of monopoly is there, right? So that is the thing here. So only one supplier is there to the best of the requester's knowledge and belief, right? Because from the buyer's side, they did all the thorough research, everything they did, but they can only find out only a single supplier out there in the market. So that the supplier doesn't give any options for the buyer, right? If the cost is comparatively high, if the cost is comparatively more than the average cost, if you feel so, you don't have any option because that particular supplier is the only supplier you can rely upon. So at any cost, you have to go with that particular supplier. So that is the thing. So only the presence of only one supplier out there in the market, that is the main concept of sole sourcing. The next concept is single sourcing, right? So both the sole as well as the single sourcing sound same, but there is a basic difference between these two. Under single sourcing, it refers to choosing a single supplier even when other options are available in the market. So that is a speciality under single sourcing. So some options are available there in the market. That means more than one supplier is there in the market, but still the buyer is going to have an agreement with a single supplier. And in the case of sole sourcing, no options are available. That is why we stick upon to a particular supplier. But in the case of a single sourcing, we have some options, but still we are stick upon to a particular supplier. So why? There are lots of sources available in the market, but the company makes a choice of going with one company for its products, and this is known as single sourcing. Right. So under the single sourcing, options are there. Why the buyer organization is going to go for a particular supplier? So some reasons are there behind that one. So the single sourcing approach is used in the following circumstances: certain circumstances or certain conditions or certain areas in which the buyer organization is forced or ready to go for a single sourcing. So under single sourcing, there is a monopoly, right? So the buyer has no choice. Then economies of scales can be achieved, right? So if you are depending upon a single supply, if your requirement is not that much particular, then you can go for a single supplier. In the sense, they will give you some discounts and also economics of scales can be achieved. Then large bulk items we can have it from a single supplier, right? So you need to make a single contract for the entire purchase. So that's a time saving concept, correct? A lot of clerical works need to be removed or avoided because of that one. Then if you have only very few order quantities, then it is better to go for a single sourcing. Right. So if you have bulk orders, so many varieties of items, so many varieties of inputs you need, then definitely based upon the characteristics or the nature of the product, you can go for n number of suppliers. But if you are planning to buy only a very few quantities or inputs, then you can definitely, it is better for time saving, cost saving, right? They will depend upon a particular single source. Then one supplier offers outstanding value for money against the competition, right? So if there is a supplier who is willing to provide you the necessary inputs in a very competitive price when compared to the other suppliers, that may be the another reason. As a buying organization, you are particularly depending upon that particular buyer seller. The buyer may desire to single source even when there are several suppliers. So these are some of the reasons in which a particular buying organization may decide to go for a single source even then there are several options are available. First one is the maybe economies of scales they can be achieved. Then they have very few order quantities are there. Then that particular supplier is very competent and they are providing a very best price out there when compared to the average price of the other suppliers. So that may be some of the reasons. And more overall, most important, the buying organization want to create a long lasting relationship with with a single supplier, so that they can be benefited in the near future. That may be some one of the another thought behind this one. The next concept next type is dual sourcing. So we can easily understood what is the concept of dual. Dual means two, right? So dual sourcing is where two suppliers are responsible for supplying all the needs for an item to the buying organization. Dual sourcing is used in the following circumstances. There is a risk of one supplier not being able to supply. A product or service is critical to an organization. Correct. Yes. So dual means instead of one we are going for two. That means some sort of if you think from the perspective of the buying organization, the inputs or the necessities which we are purchasing from the suppliers is sort of critical in nature, right? Is if you are completely depending upon a particular supplier or a single supplier, and if there is some sort of issues or some sort of problems arises between or some sort of shortage is there, the production of that particular thing or particular product will be affected. So instead of depending upon a particular supplier, if definitely we will go for more than one, that means two suppliers means you will have either one option, right? If there is if there is some issues from the part of a particular supplier, we can depend upon the next supplier, right? So if that particular input is very critical to the organization, definitely for the sake of avoiding the risk, it is better to depend upon two supplying organization rather than going for the one organization, right? So the mitigation of risk, this is a way of avoiding of the risk. How we can avoid the risk, right? So So we are just diversifying our risk into or into suppliers. So that is always better for the organization, right? Yes. So some these are some of the circumstances, right? So there is a risk of one supplier. If you are depending upon a particular supplier, means always some risk is there, correct? Then the next thing is that particular input is very critical to the organization. So it is better to go for one more rather to diversify the risk. So we have that quote, right? Don't put all the eggs in one basket. So don't depend upon a particular supplier for each and everything. Rather than one, go for two, right? If your necessities are comparatively large or bulk requirement is there or very critical is there, go for two. That is always better. Next is the last one is multiple sourcing. So multiple means, as the name indicates, many. Multiple sourcing is where many suppliers are responsible for supplying all the needs of an item to the organization. Multiple sourcing is used in the following circumstances. So rather than two, we are going for n number of right. So we are diversifying more. So here the supplier competition is very vast. N number of suppliers are there. The item is very common. The inputs, the raw materials, that is very common. So n number of suppliers are there in the market. The supplier relationship is not critical, right? Because if you are not satisfied with the performance, if you have some issues with a particular supplier, just switch the supplier and go for another. That's it. So constant supply is critical. So right. So here in the case multiple sourcing, instead of one or two, we will go for n number of suppliers, and because the supplier competition is very vast in that particular industry. Okay, so that is the reason we are going for multiple sourcing. So to conclude, we can conclude like this: dual sourcing from two suppliers, then multiple sourcing from many suppliers. So many suppliers means we are diversifying the risk again and again. Because of the nature of the input, the material is not that much critical, and if it is delayed also no issues. So we can switch in between. N number of suppliers are there out in the market, right? So it is always better to go for multiple sourcing in that type of category or that type of inputs. If the material is not critical, is not relevant, or if there is a n number of or multiple suppliers are available there in the market, definitely we will go for the multiple sourcing. So hope you understood all the main types of sourcing. Thank you.